All right, this is Todd Atkins and Miguel, and we're back with another MMA Conspiracy Hour. And before I start, we always want to thank our sponsor, Live to Fight Design. You can find them on Instagram at Live to Fight Design. And if you use my promo code Todd Atkins, you get $20 off your order. And we're going to kind of talk about UFC's decisions where I think they're having some influence on some of the decisions. You know I had titled this as the UFC fixing fights. I don't think they're necessarily fixing fights at the beginning or telling fighters to do certain things, but are they having influence on decisions? And I kind of referenced Sean O'Malley, and the latest one being this Alexa Grasso Valentina Shevchenko fight, where they had a 10-8 in the final round. No one on earth really agreed with, that kept the belt on Grasso during a the first Mexican themed UFC event. So it's kind of a convenient timing to pull something like that out. Miguel, why don't you go ahead?
Well, the system that we use right now, the commission-based system, and then, in other countries, they use derivatives of it and stuff. But the bottom line is that it comes from boxing. The boxing system, the paperwork, the commissions, everything. And judging in boxing sucks. So now, when the boxing commissions in the 2001 were convinced by the Fertittas and Dana White to accept MMA, I think one of the things that happened is that they kept it real simple for them, which is, boxing has a fighter and an opponent. MMA has a fighter and an opponent. Boxing has a matchmaker. MMA has a matchmaker. Boxing has a promoter, a referee, So they convinced them that the positions could be interchangeable. With that, obviously, now you can charge separate licenses for everything, and there's some money coming in as well, which appeals to the commission. But in no case did the commissions do an authentic, real study of deciding to employ judges that had an inkling or a clue of the sport. They inserted almost across the board all the time, boxing judges, people that had the credentials already. Other people have snuck in there. But boxing judging sucks. So now when in a lot of places you have boxing judges, that's a problem. It's a real problem because you have people who get to the boxing position, like what was the guy's name with the guy who thought he was a genius and he'd been a judge for a long time, but then he got kind of caught. What was that fellow's name? He's Chael's friend. Oh, the name's
Doug Crosby?
Yeah, Doug Crosby. So Doug Crosby clearly was there with other motives in mind. So now here's the problem is you don't have to get everybody in a room to have like-minded people with the same thing in mind that can operate without having to do an authentic conspiracy of like, all right, this is the way it's going to go. But if at the end of the day, all you care about is money, then I believe probably Grasso does move the needle more than Shevchenko. And Dana has subtle ways of sending that message out. And the problem is Dana trying to send a message, or is he just, kind of doing business as usual? But I thought it was strange that they had some Mexican belt maker making a very special belt, Hey, Shevchenko, I guess, could have worn it, but it was, Mexican colors, and it was done by Mexico, and it was kind of to celebrate Grasso, and that was the name that Dana used in the video press release that they did on that. Why do that press release? Is it that important that a new belt has been designed? Yeah, Dana with his 8 million followers may be doing a favor, a solid for the artist, Sure, I'll do a video with you. That's, a lot of people would kill to get it shared by Dana. But why is he doing that stuff in the first place? Why? What is he? What are we gonna? How often are we gonna go back to a Mexican belt maker for belts? Is he gonna be the new UFC belt maker? Okay, that's cool too. But was it a message for people out there to be like, yeah, everything looks good for Grasso? And then, what were the credentials of this judge that gave it a 10-8? One of the things, like, for example, Adelaide Byrd, with all of her historically bad decisions in boxing and MMA, she never has had to face the music and the press and answer, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, it's always that way. This guy's not going to have to answer anything either. They said, oh, we're going to have 10-8 training. Big deal. They take the blame, but they don't have to face anybody. And then the UFC just brings these people back.
Yeah, the UFC, like I said, the 10-8 training, if it's done by the UFC, that's fine. But, the boxing commission is going to have to sign off on that. And, they're going to have to be okay with that. And it's still going to the core of the problem. I just saw recently, and the name's going to escape me, but I just saw today that there's a fighter with a history that's about to make his debut as a judge or a referee or something in one of the bigger boxing commissions out there. Where are these people? I know Ricardo Almeida does it. He spent time judging. I know Tyrone Roberts, another old-time veteran, is heavily involved in a lot of the Midwest boxing commissions. But I don't see enough fighters that are actually saying, look, refereeing like Tyrone does is special. Not everybody can jump in and be a ref. But pretty much every MMA fighter should have a good perspective enough to sit and judge better than the judges that we have here. Like Adelaide Byrd, I've said this before, but when she was a boxing judge, people question her boxing credentials. And her boxing credentials are that she's married to a referee. So if she doesn't know boxing, what makes you think she's going to adapt and, figure out the MMA game real fast? I know she didn't sit around and be like, watch the video. Okay. And she didn't go, rewind that. And, so explain to me what Hoist did to Severn there, like at UFC 4. That didn't happen. She doesn't know. And then she made no attempt to educate herself. And I can say that just about across the board for most judges. Now, again, I go to the corruption in the whole system. We've been talking about boxing being part of the problem. The referee for Floyd Mayweather's first fight was the same as the referee for his last fight. Now, I'm not talking about all this series of exhibitions and stuff.
Yep.
And what's ridiculous about that is because at the point where, Floyd was at the end of his career, there is no doubt that in Vegas, where most of the fights were, or if not all of them at the end of his career, in Vegas, where he's a resident and everybody's there, when Floyd Mayweather fought, everybody at the casino made more money. There was more tip money for the people that clean the rooms because it's such a big event, those fights in the heat that they generate and the money that came in. It's pretty well known that the judges and the ref are supposed, in the boxing commission paperwork, they're supposed to make a couple $100 depending on how much they travel and, like per diem type money so they can get their food and stuff while they go to judge. It's not something where they should be pocketing money. But when Floyd Mayweather fights, the ref gets, I'm going to guess $25,000 in an envelope, even if it's 5,000. But so what incentive does that ref have to judge it completely by the book and not feel like, man, that Mayweather, he's so good, because if he loses, that gravy train comes to an end. And not everybody can judge. If it's 25 or 5, you can guarantee even most other title fights, Canelo, the big ones, those are coveted spots. The refs are selected based on that sort of stuff. Who deserves the money? Who deserves the tip money? Not on who's the best credentialed ref or judge and stuff like that.
But I think this is important for people to understand, because I said this before. If I screw up all the time and I take the blame and you don't, you're the promoter, you don't, you keep bringing me back. That's pretty convenient for you, is it not?
Yeah,
You don't take any of the blame. I do what you want. I do what you want multiple times. You take none of the blame for it. You never punish me for it because I'm doing what you want. That's pretty
yeah.
convenient.
So where does Shevchenko and Grasso fight? Where was the fight situated?
Vegas.
In Vegas. Okay. And like I said, it's unlikely the UFC is going to go to Peru, where Shevchenko has ties. They're certainly not going to the Ukraine or Russia anytime
He
soon.
asked for them to go to Kazakhstan to have the rematch.
Yeah. And good luck there. I don't even know if Kazakhstan's a separate country at this point. It was at one point part of the Soviet Union, but I'm not sure what the world's geopolitical situation at the UFC or anybody's going to be doing a show there. Meanwhile, Mexico is a monster. It's an economic monster. Many people are referring to it as like the next China, the new China. So why not? The message is subtly sent. And yeah, everybody benefits from financially from Mexico. So that's why the part of sport slowly gets taken out of it, because if money is all you care about, that's when you get things like Conor McGregor jumping Frankie Edgar in line for a title shot.
I don't think the UFC should be absolved of any responsibility here. I think it falls on them. These decisions are benefiting them.
Yeah, and I think the solution is in changing the entire boxing commission structure. And that is actually a move that is bigger than the UFC. The UFC could ask to initiate it, could even fund it, could help if they wanted to pursue it, but they couldn't just pull the trigger on changing a wholesale change to the boxing commissions on their own. They need to, and therefore I don't think they want to pursue that. Who cares? Who cares? At this point, like you said, they get away with things because in some ways they can absolve themselves and say, hey, we don't pick the judges and stuff like that. And yeah, they do have some leeway about eliminating judges and things, but don't think that sometimes they're not politics, And, Dana, I wonder, it's been a while since Dana annihilated a ref or a judge the way he used to. Like, I mean, he still is sharp-tongued and everything, but not the way he used to. He used to eviscerate people. And, now it is what it is usually what you get from him. And it's an interesting situation, but that's what it is. I don't think you have to get everybody involved in the room and everybody goes, here's the script. I think the messages are clearly sent who they want, by where the money goes to promote, where they're putting the star power type of promotion. And it goes from there. A judge who's constantly picking that, according that way, is likely to pass the little thing. How much vetting are they really doing of these judges? They're not. So
yeah, he said the guy should be investigated. Well, that's nice to say. Who's going to do it? You're not. So who cares?
It falls to the Las Vegas Boxing Commission. And in Vegas, the thing about it, the thing that's criminal to me is that Vegas is a fully funded boxing commission. You have a state there that gambles. They are part of the system of the ATF. They answer to the lieutenant governor. They haven't changed the structure since, the years. But the basics of it is the lieutenant governor also has some police authority, like I said, the ATF. And that's how they will shut your fight down if you're not sanctioned by the boxing commission. They know who to call. It's all in the same tree of authority. And that's the big structure. So when Conor McGregor screws up or any fighter screws up, Nick Diaz, for example, and they take 20% of his purse, what they do in Nevada is they take the 20% and now it goes in a pool for the whims of whatever else is going on. So, for example, Conor McGregor's or anybody's fine money could perfectly well go to fund the ATF's Christmas party that year, instead of putting it towards drug testing or anything legitimately that helps the fight. It all goes into a common pool.
Hmm.
So if I'm incorrect about any of those details, then it's changed a little bit or whatever, but it's very much I'm not far off. I'm not far off. I understand the way that stuff works. So be it.
Now, I wanted to go over some news stories with you because I sent you a few. We kind of talked about this, but I sent you a few. The first one I want to talk about was the Mark Hunt thing. Obviously he just lost his lawsuit over Brock Lesnar and steroids and whatnot. What did you think of that?
We need Bob Mazy back on here. Why did they decide they pushed it all towards, explain to the fans and me again one more time what the exact court decision was. They just threw out the charges?
Yeah, the judge felt that he didn't present enough evidence to warrant, them moving forward.
Okay. This is a long time ago, but I seem to remember that some entity, I don't know if it was USADA or one of the athletic commissions that does drug testing, but some entity had Brock Lesnar positive before the fight. And they chose to not put that in public to a certain extent. It got kind of brushed over. And at the end of the day, despite the positive test, the fight happened. Hunt, I think, rightfully so, says, so you guys, so we were aware of that, but we did everything we could just to make the fight happen again for money. The same problem as the first segment. Again, for money. You put me at risk because, as an athlete, we're out there competing. It's dangerous enough. I don't need to be fighting a guy that big on steroids. And I think most people would, anybody who calls Hunt a coward or anything like that is way off on that. At the end of the day, Hunt is only asking that they follow the rules. So I think there was a pretty clear trail there that something fishy had happened and that Brock was positive, and despite the positive test that he fought. Now, if the judge, I don't know if Hunt's people couldn't find proof of that.
Well, Hunt was trying to prove fraud, battery, aiding and abetting battery, and civil conspiracy claims. But the judge granted the defendant's motion for summary judgment on all of those claims, meaning that the case was dismissed because Hunt really didn't suffer any kind of serious damages in the fight.
Yeah, I don't know if those are not the. I don't know those battery and stuff like that. Was he pursuing them criminally? This doesn't even sound like he needed a good civil lawsuit attacking them and asking them for a big payment for the risk
Yeah, I guess that's what he was asking. Like Lesnar defeated him, but he was later suspended for 1 year by the commission after he tested positive for banned substances.
But the positive test was also revealed at some point.
Yeah.
To have been dated before the date of the fight, so they knew before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't, have a following of this case in detail and things like that. But Hunt looks like he may have pursued, the most, ugly and, like battery charges is almost like, I think he was trying to make a spectacle and didn't think about this. I think, like I said, a civil lawsuit pursuing just those facts that we've talked about. That paperwork should be easy enough to subpoena, and then So I don't know. I don't know if that was just bad legal advice or if the UFC lawyers painted him into a corner, or what the deal is. But that's strange to me. The charges he pursued.
Now I want to ask you about this news that PFL, on a weekend where there's no UFC events, has not been able to get a live stream for the US for their PFL Paris event.
Are you asking me to do everything for Don Davis? It's like at this point, what do we got? We got 2 days. Call Donald Trump or go to Rumble. Isn't that Donald Trump's media thing? Stream it there and let the people see it. It's not that hard to stream. You got the TV feed going to Europe. You put a little computer there with a nerd, and you stream it on the Rumble and let the people in the States see it. 2 days before, you can't solve this problem, and you're going to just say, sorry, we kind of didn't get the deal done. We have no streaming, and it's not available. You can't see the PFL. So we can't see the PFL.
Yeah, why can't they just have somebody like aim a video camera at the big screen on like TikTok or something? I mean, aim their phone so people can watch it there. Who cares?
That's the thing is that it's just a poor marketing and PR decision to just say we have a fight show that you're not going to be able to see, and here they are talking about international expansion, and they have Francis Ngannou's on the board to talk about Africa and stuff like that, and like you said, they could run free of UFC competition in the United States this weekend, and they choose to give up on showing it a couple of days before and do this press release. So it's really easy to see why Dana is, the PFL is so far down the stratosphere that Dana really hasn't even shown some concern. Even the Ngannou thing, which may have been a little speed bump for Dana. As we're coming up on Stipe and John Jones, and he's got his guy still, so I'm sure he doesn't think about Ngannou anymore. But even with Ngannou there, they seem to have dropped the ball so badly that Dana is probably just laughing.
Yeah, and this is where they're debuting Cedric Doumbé. Is a big signing for them. And the Lazy King.
They concentrated a French kickboxer, like kickboxing. From the early days of the UFC, kickboxers came over, but you got older kickboxers and things like it's a weird sport because it doesn't really have a huge following in the States. And at the heyday of K1, when you had all those immense fights and things like that, they haven't gotten back to that pinnacle yet. So it's a regional signing, and they got the TV. I guess they're going to show it in France, where he's from, right? I guess the French will get to see it. So if you've got a French friend, call him up and ask him to hold his phone up to his TV, and we'll do Don Davis's job for him.
Now talk about your theory where you experienced in Bodog.
Well, it's interesting because, like I said, at this point, the PFL, the black eye we're talking about is that it's a few days before the event, and they've sort of given up. Like, there's no way they can get it done. And yeah, there's no way they're going to show it on Channel 4 or on a big network or even a cable channel, on a couple of days' notice. But they can find a way to let the fans, the 18 fans out there craving PFL, to see the fights in the States, because then their 18 is going to be 15. But how does this happen in the first place? This is one of two things. Either the executive or the person in charge of this deal in the PFL dropped the ball. Like, oh, you didn't get it done, I'm sorry, you know what I mean? And that's possible. When I was with Bodog, we woke up one day, and from one day to the next, the Bodog.com websites were gone, seized by the United States government. And it was down to an accountant that forgot to make the payment to pay for the URLs. And as soon as we stopped owning them, the government was ready, poised, and swept in. And then after that, you can look this up, they went and launched all the websites again under Bodog Life. That was an internal mistake, I think. And that could be what the PFL is dealing with here. Some dummy fell asleep at the wheel, and now the American public is not going to see a fight show of theirs. Or, didn't schedule or whatever. Now, the other thing, also at Bodog, was we were trying our second pay-per-view. And we're making calls to the executives at the TV, at the pay-per-view, to try, to get the people that we dealt with for our first pay-per-view, and we're not getting calls back. Gone. And at some point, we heard through the grapevine that that person was now a UFC employee. So you have one or two choices. Either somebody ran some interference and messed up their deal, or somebody inside dropped the ball and messed up their deal. Despite those problems, I'm not. Now that you have those problems, you find a solution. At the end of the day, we did get our pay-per-view on. And at the end of the day, they should be showing this to making it available to Americans that want to see it. Again, how many can there possibly be that are dying for this show in the PFL? But you run the risk of hurting those couple of dozen people or whatever it is.
That's true. Probably not a lot.
If you have 50 fans and you lose 20 of them, that's brutal. And the PFL is at risk of that in my book.
Now, I took some heat for criticizing this commentator, who commentates some of these, what do they call these, like regional MMA shows. Ben the Bane Davis. I sent you some video on this. And he fought Anderson Silva's son, or one of them, Gabe Silva, in this Misfits card. And I was kind of talking to you about his shtick as he goes up against guys that are light years better than him. And not only does that, he doesn't really train for these matches, so he's getting beat in record time, 25 seconds, 13 seconds. I think this fight was like 25 seconds or something. And to me, I criticize him because, one, he's not preparing for these matches, which is bad enough, but going out there and getting knocked out and thinking it's funny and other people cheering him on, it just doesn't appeal to me. And, especially us as old school guys that were on the beginning, a lot of guys, it probably would have rubbed them the wrong way. People that competed, people that trained, even if you tried to teach people and you weren't a high level skill, people didn't like you. So, yeah, I kind of wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about that.
This whole wave that we're experiencing in the last few years of, non-athletes thinking they could, even athletes, I forget the guy's last name, Nate, from he was a former Nick, a little guy, but he was a slam dunk champion. I think he's the first guy who fought Jake Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Nate Robinson.
Yeah, Nate Robinson. It makes a mockery of the people boxing, on weekends in the Golden Gloves when they're 15, 14, coming up the ranks, hoping to get on the Olympic ladder, at some point making a decision to go pro, and all the dues paying that real guys do. We're about to see Canelo and Jermell Charlo this weekend. And, Canelo started boxing professionally when he was 15. According to the laws of Mexico, he could do it. And, obviously he was practicing before his first fight, right? So he's been doing it since he was a boy. The Charlos, too, have, they're twins, and boxing is their life. So I think that the people that, pay their dues in this sport should be in an uproar over the money and the distribution here. And the fact is, again, tie it back to the first segment, the boxing commissions are allowing this to happen again for the almighty dollar. And that trumps all. We can't not do this fight because it's going to generate $5 million.
I don't think Ben Davis is generating that, but for me, it's just, people cheering on some guy who is not ready to be, in the ring or on a mat where he got heel hooked in 13 seconds by a black belt. This guy's going to get hurt. If he had any toughness at all, he probably would have got hurt the other night. Thank goodness he
If he,
didn't have much of a chin, and the guy got knocked out quick.
well, if it's not generating $5 million, then it's still making some money for the boxing commission. And the problem with the boxing commission is that at the end of the day, those shows and smokers, on weekends in veteran halls don't generate a lot of money. They go home, the guys go home with $50 for gas and the experience of having watched the fights, been a ref, a judge, the commissioners in the back, everybody. There's no money there. So they do it for little. They do it for the fees they charge the boxers and the managers and things. So they can be very petty when it comes down to what they consider making money. Somebody approved, in the case of Ben Davis, somebody approved a non-boxer and non-athlete to participate in a boxing match. Who did that?
Yeah, it was Misfits, this influencer boxing show in London, whatever.
Oh, it was in London?
Yeah,
So
I think so, yeah.
So was it under the auspices of the British Boxing Board of Control?
I would think so.
Then that the British Boxing Board of Control and the especially if they're involved in MMA, I guess they may have an MMA commission that's separate. So this was pure boxing, so it would be the British Boxing Board of Control. Again, it's just let's do a commission. We can charge money, and they're not understanding the sports that they're governing.
I think you bringing up Canelo is a good point because Jake Paul challenged him. He could have easily gone over there and beat the crap out of him easily and made good money, and he didn't. Why? Because Jake Paul has no business fighting him, and he's not going to waste his time doing it. Even though he could make good money, it'd be the easiest payday of his life. He's not going to lower himself to go over there and beat up Jake Paul, waste his time doing it, because he's paid his dues and Jake Paul hasn't. And he doesn't deserve. Jake Paul doesn't deserve to fight Canelo. And that's why he's not going to go over there and do it.
Well, I'll tell you another caveat to that. And this is the problem, again, with the whole sport and the whole situation here. Thank God Canelo has already monetized big time. Like with his golden, even from the Golden Boy days, I know that maybe him and Oscar broke up and stuff. There was problems there. But he replaced Mayweather as the top draw in boxing as soon as Mayweather left. And Golden Boy was perfectly positioning him for a long time. And they monetized to the tune of, he's extremely wealthy, 9 figures wealthy. So he doesn't need the money. And we're lucky that he's not a guy who's still being like, hey, where's my paycheck? Because that's what happened with a guy like, say, Francis Ngannou. If people are looking around being like, what, when am I going to get paid? And they're at the time, and they're offered something like that, you can understand why they would do it. So we're lucky in Canelo's case, but it's still a grave risk because, yeah, the guy, Jake Paul understands, and his entity understands, monetizing, getting you on TV, getting the fight distributed, and then they also have good command of, the press, the relationship with the press and the media, where they're out there all the time and things like that. The only part is that they haven't paid their dues in boxing. Mm-hmm. So, they understand the other stuff, and they say, yeah, we are here, to fix boxing and to pay people better and stuff like that. Then why does Jake Paul have to be the star of the fight? Why not just put all that power and sit back as a promoter? And Jake Paul, I've heard him, he can turn a word, why not settle back into the Dana role? If it's about making money, Dana's made a lot of money. You can make money as a promoter. Why not do something legit? But no, now we have to be subject to watching him box.
And Frank Shamrock said something that was interesting that I think kind of falls along these lines. And I think it's turned out to be true. He said, guys who do this for cheap or guys who just do this just to do it, they're ruining it for guys like me, guys that are elite level athletes, because the UFC is just going to use them eventually. Over time, they're just going to use those guys. They don't need us. If they can get people to watch these guys that'll fight for very little money, that's who they're going to use. And I think that's turned out to be true. You know, like on the Contender Series now, almost everybody gets a contract every Tuesday or when they have it. You know, that's what they're doing. So
But the
that's what
UFC
I'm kind of
still have,
talking about.
they still have John Jones. They still have, you know,
Yeah,
the
they
other
have a
side
few.
like that. So they have the elite taken care of. And that's something that has happened post Frank Shamrock. So I understand Frank's point because, you know, I think Frank was probably getting about 30,000 a fight, and that was considered elite pay. You know, I'm guessing, but Frank was never a guy that, you know, they were like, well, here's $500,000, and then, you know, here's another 50,000 on top of it in a bonus and stuff like that. He didn't exist in those days. So Frank is exactly what I was talking about, that effect that Canelo at least already got paid. Yeah, Frank never got paid. And Frank was the best of the best when he was at the top of his game.
What I'm saying is the early days of MMA, a guy like Ben Davis who's in the community, I don't think people would have found him to be funny.
No, I think, you know, again, there's been so much dues paying as far as, you know, like I said, Frank Shamrock paid dues for all of us. Because, you know, I liken the development of the sport to watching an Olympic swimming match from above, where you consider each lane is a factor. You know, relationship with the press. Can you get a TV deal? Are the athletes coming along? Is, you know, everything. How's the training? You know, and they move at different rates. And the talent of the fighters was far, far above the amount of money that they were making for a long time. And at some point, you could argue that that's still going on, especially when you consider a piece of the pie, and especially when you could take away maybe the UFC's top paid 5 or 10 guys, and everybody else on the roster is still very drastically underpaid. But at the very least, they're not in Frank Shamrock's boat anymore. The elite guys are getting paid. Frank nowadays, if he had maintained his dominance in the middleweight division, you know, if he had popped up, you know, 20 years later or whatever it is, and he was kingpin there, yeah, Adesanya made money. I saw rather a video clip of Chael Sonnen, another middleweight, that they asked him about his biggest payday, and he said 8.8 million to fight Anderson Silva. So, you know, you could add up all Frank's fights together, multiply it by 10, and you're not going to get to 8.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if he was doing it now, Frank would be okay because of the talent he had. But at that point, the development of the sport, the fighters were way ahead of it, you know, and they deserve more money. But that's why, for example, the lawsuit, yeah, there's limitations according to my understanding that, you know, they can't go back beyond 4 years from the day you file it and stuff. So those guys fighting in the 90s are not part of the lawsuit. You know, but all those guys feel that they never got paid for what, you know, I did that and I never got paid for that. You know, Mark Coleman, I was heavyweight champion. I was pound for pound the best guy in the world. I was John Jones in my day. And he doesn't have the money that John has made it, you know, for all his fights for one, you know. So it's a point in time with Frank. He has a point, but the UFC's done things to, you know, make some of that more palatable for distribution.
But I mean, what I'm saying is, in the early days, there was more kind of like an ownership of the sport. And if you're going to come in here and try and make a mockery if you're in our community and you're going to try and make a mockery of what we're doing, guys didn't take kindly to that.
Yeah, no, I could tell. For example, like, I would never have booked anything like this. Not ever. And, like I said, if the UFC were purely sport, then Edgar would have fought and not McGregor, and you got a whole different path and stuff. And McGregor may not have risen to the top because he wouldn't have gotten the opportunity of the spot. The other athletes would have that. But because money was involved, everybody's like, well, we're doing it for money. And it's okay. But it's not okay. Frankie Edgar is not okay with it. Even if he speaks the company line, I'll tell you, John Fitch is one of the leaders of the lawsuit. He wasn't okay with it. He got his title shot. St. Pierre beat him, but he did take St. Pierre 5 rounds. And if I recall correctly, and he was the number one contender for a long time after that and never got a rematch. People skipping over him and skipping over him. That's what the base of the lawsuit is. There's no sport in this. So anytime that money starts to come into it,
No, I'm talking about Ben Davis here. What I'm saying is in the early years of MMA, if you were in the community and you're going out and making a fool out of yourself like that, guys, like I said, in the 90s, they would have taken that stuff personal.
Yeah, I don't do boxing, so like a Ben Davis, there's only one or two things that would have happened. I would have never booked it, or I would have put him in with like Aaron or Henry, like one of my best guys at the time, and told him to, put him to sleep and get him out of here as fast as possible. And I know he's been put to sleep and he keeps coming back and stuff like that. I said, I don't do boxing, so it would have had to be MMA, so it'd be different. But people would be humiliated. And the fighters would very much take that, as you said, that the honor of the sport on. So yeah, I think the safest way is to avoid giving it any attention.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to explain to people. My mentality is not the same as the mentality today, where you got some people, not really a lot. I didn't take a lot of heat of it. A couple of MMA journalists, I don't even know who they are, kind of gave me some flack. But yeah, I mean, my mentality came from the 90s, when I was around the sport. And people were very protective of the sport then. And if you tried to make a fool out of the fighters, if you were in the community and making a fool out of yourself even, you're in the community. So you're one of us. They took that personal,
I think there's a piece of that, but I think the problem is, no matter at what point in time in the history of this, a non-fighter participating in it is dangerous and stupid. It's not entertaining. It's not, something that should be generating money or like in views in any way, because it's dangerous, So I don't know. Like even Tyson Fury and Ngannou.
At least Ngannou is going to be highly trained, in great shape. That's totally different than some guy who's not even training for it, thinks it's a joke.
You're right. It is totally different, but that's why I present that to you, because despite that, Ngannou Fury should never have been sanctioned.
That'd be like me going in to fight Tyson Fury.
No, because you're not in great shape.
Yeah, it would be insane. I'm not going to train. I'll just go in there and fight Tyson Fury and laughing about it when he kills me.
Yeah, no. Ngannou and him shouldn't be fighting under Queensberry rules until, if it was real. But these crossover matches are now accepted, and Ngannou shows up, and they know they'll be able to sell it, and Fury has done everything he can to sell it, and Fury wants the payday. So the boxing commission doesn't do their job. The boxing commission should go, yeah, I know what you're going to monetize on this, but I'm sorry to say that I can't sanction this fight in any way, shape, or form with the heavyweight champion of the world against the guy with no fights and no experience. just isn't going to happen on my watch. So they go to Saudi Arabia to do it. But still, you know what I mean? That's the problem is in Ngannou's case, Ngannou's going to actually be a threat because of what he brings to the table.
Right.
Despite that, this match shouldn't be made.
Right.
That's not what this is all about. But, you know.
But at least he's somewhat of a threat. He has power. He'll be in shape. He'll train seriously for the fight. That's completely different.
And they make enough money here. Again, so Ngannou, I think, is getting 20 million or something like that. Fury is going to make a lot of money for this.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem there is that again, that pie that's divided up and chopped up, and who knows, you know. I saw a lot of people on that stage, Frank Warren, Bob Arum, no PFL people. What we are sure of is that the PFL will not get a bite. They forgot that same exec that forgot to do the feed to the States. Guess what? He was in charge of getting people to the PFL press, you know, the PFL presence at the press conference in Saudi Arabia, where that didn't happen either.
You should volunteer to help the PFL at this point.
You know, if they wanted to call me and let me know a little bit of what's going on or show me some direction, I'd be glad to consult. But because every time I've seen them in the news, since 3 days after the Ngannou signing, I'm sitting there waiting for another shoe to drop, including, you know, something impressive. They signed a French kickboxer. Okay. They had no follow-up to Ngannou. They've done nothing but look bad since then. They actually announced at some point, you know, in all this time, that they were about to announce the opponent. And then they never did. We still don't know when he's going to be in the PFL cage. I see nobody on the PFL's roster unless they think they're going to try to pull off getting Tyson Fury in a cage, which I don't think they're going to be able to do. So they don't really, they come out in public and don't deliver. And here again, this weekend is a show that they're not delivering to the American public. So you know, here's the consulting. You can have this one for free. Call Rumble. You know, have Don Davis, you know, go dondavis@gmail.com. You know, PFL 2027 World Conquer could be the password. And then you can use that email to open up a YouTube channel or to open up a Rumble channel. Probably Rumble.
Dana might block them since he has his power slapstick project on Rumble.
And that is this may be a good way to. I think that, you know, when I say the PFL and the UFC are not in the same stratosphere, let's just look at ratings. And I think you just hit it on the head. I bet you the PFL ratings are more comparable to the power slap ratings than the real UFC. That's how many people see and care about it. And, you know, that's not good. That's not good because they've been, you know, making noise about what they're going to do for 6 months and they've done very little.
Even Dana White could get power slap streamed, although he failed to get it on pay-per-view, which he said he would do.
Yeah, you know, the power slap, whatever it was done. I don't, you know, and Dana was passionate about it for a minute, but I don't think, you know, it was an all eggs in one basket type of, like the PFL this is the league that they're bringing us to compete at the highest level of the sport. And Dana and Bo, the other thing, it's like, man, people in bars react to it, chicks, you know, people go down, people are left like, whoa. That's what he was looking at. So he backed power slap. Big mistake, that's fine. But he's still at UFC. He's got a UFC stock, money coming in every show. Not worried about it. The PFL only presents the PFL, and they're dropping the ball like power slam. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's I know we've talked about it a lot, but it's like they continue to shock us.
you know, who needs to understand that you need to distribute your fight shows every way possible? Every way possible. Now you tell me in any way you can get it in front of people, you know, open a YouTube channel and stream it on YouTube. Give it away for free, but don't tell people can't see it. Just the worst publicity, public relations move, out there. Takes us back to like 1910, where it's like, Jack Johnson's fighting in Australia, and we get to read about it in the paper.
Or the early Abu Dhabis,
Yeah.
But I thought that was cool because it made it mysterious. Like you had to be there to see it. If you weren't there, you couldn't see it.
Yeah, but again, old heads like us are used to that. Nowadays, people are not used to that, which makes it even more aggravating. How can you tell a modern 21st century, 2023 audience, we can't show it to you? It's beyond comprehension in terms of, are they trying to submarine themselves in terms of respect?
I don't find Abu Dhabi as interesting now. If it was still an event that was held in Abu Dhabi and only the Sheikh went and a few people like you and Rafael Torre and people like, it would be more mysterious. We'll let you know who won, and you can watch it in a week or two, but you can't watch it live.
The Abu Dhabi's changed over the years, but it's undergone a very similar process to the UFC, where, you have Gordon Ryan and you got a couple of guys that kind of stand out. But at the end of the day, everybody's qualified and has points and things from across the board. And it's just become a lot more homogenized.
Yep.
There's not as many big names. The first few Abu Dhabis, probably, the first two American events were 2005, 2007, 2003 in Brazil. Those were the last where I think it was invitational also.
Yeah.
So you were going to have a cross section of MMA guys and the best grapplers and things, guys with good Abu Dhabi experience and records, where they're actually valuing what the guy did before. Now it's all qualifiers, or the majority are qualifiers. So the sport's advanced by light years, but it has that same feel of the UFC, where everybody's more cookie cutter.
Yeah.
So be it. Those days where, Mark Kerr, no matter what happens, John Jones isn't going to go do Abu Dhabi.
I think invite only is cooler.
Yeah. The guy, Sheikh Noon, who's the sponsor of it, and I know his older brother is also respectfully cited. Sheikh Noon is like the finance ministry of the country now, which means his older brother would have an even more senior position. So they have no time for this. You know what I mean? They love that it's going on, and the name and the lift the country gets internationally from it, and that they did that, and it also feeds their passion for jiu-jitsu. But they're worried about other things now. So that formulation of the that formulation, and I heard actually that the first year, a friend of the Sheik paid for everything, kind of as a birthday present to us. Says, "You want to throw a tournament? I'll pay for it." Among friends that are all very rich, but so the Sheiks, put their money into it from the second year on and things, but now the money's paid. They don't come out of pocket, I don't think, for the prizes, maybe, but I think all that can be generated through sponsors at this point. And I think that once it became that, they were going to lose some interest, so be it.
Well, Miguel, I think it's a great thing to on, and I always want to let you kind of close on your the dog rescue project, wet nose project.
I'm going to try sending some video. I got 2 new dogs that were we took in and are taking care of Max and Luto, and they're big, kind of pit bull, kind of not purebreds, but they're big, but they're good dogs. They're not aggressive like the other ones and stuff. So they're on my property now, and we're adjusting them to the rest of the pack and things. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Their owner, God bless him. He's a retired guy from California, and I kid you not, he's 70 years old and had a hip replacement, and he fell. And I kid you not, he is the size of Tim Sylvia. He's huge. So he was like on the floor, and I'm like, man, I'm calling an ambulance. I'm not gonna be able to pick you up. And yeah, he went down hard, and he's gonna be in the hospital for at least 3 weeks and so. So we're just watching over his dogs, and hopefully he comes back. And if he's not able to care for him, then we're going to be stuck with him. So that's the way the ball bounces on those types of things. If not, the animals would be in trouble, but we're caring for them, and they're good dogs.
Yes, and everyone watching this, you can find the GoFundMe that'll be in the show notes, where you can support this project that Miguel, the dog rescue.
Anything's appreciated. We would love, to have good news and be like, yeah, we don't need any money, everything's fine. But unfortunately, every day is a new emergency kind of thing, and any support is appreciated, and it goes pretty directly to keep floating the project. The house, not the one I'm here in. This is a second location, but the house has 70 pets now, so it would be considered a small rescue. There's ones across the world with thousands and stuff, but we can't do more without help. So you let us know.
Well, as always, I appreciate you taking the time. It's always great to talk to you and catch up on some of these stories, and doing these episodes. People watching this, I appreciate it, and like I said, please support the Wet Nose Project, what Miguel's doing with the dog rescue in Costa Rica. And until next time, everybody take care.